Hello everyone, new video here, first new video of the new year. Today is Saturday, January 11th, 2025. I try to make that clear so you can differentiate between new videos and clips from older videos without having to check the description. This video is going to address a couple of things that are being discussed more frequently due to the attention being given to certain individuals, specifically Wes Huff, a Protestant Trinitarian Christian who has appeared on well-known platforms and in speaking through various media outlets about the Bible and his scholastic interests, endeavors, and accomplishments. His specific focus and area of study appears to be philology and text criticism. So some of the subjects that he has spoken about have gotten a lot of attention from both Christians and non. I don't know Wes Huff, and I don't have anything against him. I'm not on his side of Christianity, if that makes sense to you non-Christians. I'm sure to some of you it does. I'm a non-Trinitarian. So me and Wesley don't see eye to eye on significant biblical doctrines and related history. But, I wasn't really going to get into this whole discussion specific to Wes Huff and some of the issues he brought up and that were brought up to him by Joe Rogan and others. I'm just going to talk about a couple because I think they've reached a level now where we have and we will continue to have a problem unless someone does something. I'm not saying what I'm doing here will solve it, but hopefully it will help it. Because I'm not seeing people who should be helping solve it do that. Instead, what I'm seeing are individuals who, for example, like Dr. White, in the last day or so, not say anything about some important errors. I think overall, Wes Huff represents Christianity well. Of course, by that primarily, I mean, he's a breath of fresh air in comparison to people like Sam Shamoon, William Albrecht, right? But he's also not very far removed from them. It's funny. I noticed how Sam and others tried to really piggyback off of Wes's popularity after he talked with Billy Carson, which is a whole separate subject, but I won't get off onto that right now. Either way, what I want to focus on is not Wes Huff and my differences or agreements with him, other than where it concerns just a couple of issues, again, that have been more discussed recently because of him and his appearance on Joe Rogan and his interaction with non-Christians through his videos. So there are others who have spoken about Wes's claims, for example, with regard to the gospel endings in our earliest New Testament manuscripts. So others, non-Christians specifically, have done a pretty good job of showing where Wes made some significant errors. Now, the video Wes did on this specific issue of the gospel endings wasn't what he brought up or was discussed on the Joe Rogan show. It was a video that he did before that where he made claims about the endings in the earliest gospels at the end of Mark that would seem that you would take from what he's saying that these gaps would indicate that they're sort of left there for an alternate ending, like the longer ending. But others, again, non-Christians, pointed out some errors in what he said that it would seem like Wes could have found out on his own, right? We all make mistakes, of course. Of course, I'm not saying that to justify any errors. When you make a mistake, the only way out of it is to acknowledge it and apologize and don't make the mistake again. If you do that, well, then you're good. That's normal. What happens, though, is sometimes, for various reasons, it can be difficult to just accept that you made a significant error. Now, I personally would try to apologize more quickly for something like that, because last thing I want to do is be known for spreading a significant error. I'm not talking about differences of opinion about doctrine, right? I'm talking about a factual error. If you want more on the whole issue of the gospel endings and where Wes made this error in his own slides, right, where he put up a slide that contradicted what he was saying, that had a gap with the longer ending in the very codex that he criticized Billy Carson about, or one of them, I guess. So, nevertheless, we make mistakes, but when non-Christians come along and point out your mistakes that you do in a video that you're an expert about the subject matter, and you have time, you have a team with you, and you prepare the slides, you put them up there, and you just record and talk about them, but you get it all wrong with regard to a pretty critical point, that just invites the atheists to justly criticize us, and we look stupid, right? Even though I'm not, again, on Wes Huff's team, I am still under the umbrella of Christianity, right? What happens, like I've said before, when Sam acts the way he does, it taints us all, right? He's really not qualified and fit, like Dr. White rightly said. Right? He may not have criticized Wes Huff correctly, because according to Dr. White, the only problem he saw was in Wes's presentation about Mormonism. So while, again, he didn't bring up the whole gospel endings in the Rogan show, and that's what White was talking about, another error that Wes made that White didn't bring up or talk about had to do with the Isaiah scroll. We'll get to that in a minute. But like I said with Sam and, of course, William, right? William will quote a chapter heading in Justin Martyr in a debate with a Muslim and add exposition to it after he sees, because of his own notation, that he just erred. He won't admit it, not during the debate or after. Right? That's the game over. Right? That's unacceptable. Sam will do a video and openly admit he's responding to something he didn't read or hear himself. So we know, humiliation, disgrace, Proverbs 18:13, right? So yes, Wes is a breath of fresh air where it concerns comparisons with people like that. But we can't have people out there taking the lead in the overall umbrella of Christianity and trying to give us at least some better, credibility in terms of facts and history. We can't have a lot of significant errors, especially if you're not going to just come right out and apologize for them. Make a big error, significant error, and someone, especially your opponent, calls you on it, you got to say, well, I made an error right there. My bad. I meant to say this, or, I don't need to say that because, or whatever. Or if you did, and it changes things, you say that too. You have to do that right away, because if it's a factual error and everyone can see it, there's no benefit whatsoever to not admitting it. That's why William is catastrophe. Right? Even if he admits it now, that's why I felt I had to do this video. What I'm seeing is, and I'm getting people asking me questions like, what's going on? What's the issue with Isaiah? There's a question I got. Why are people saying Isaiah is word for word the same as the Dead Sea Scroll and the Masoretic Text in Isaiah, and others are saying it's not? What's going on here? So This is where it takes us to the Joe Rogan show. But again, I do believe Wes overall is representing Christianity in a much better light. The problem is that's not what the atheists and non-Christians are going to focus on, right? And that wouldn't be what I focus on if I was debating Wes or anyone else on things like the Trinity, right? You make an error, you blow it too many times. Well, what are we supposed to do? Just keep letting the opposition make mistake after mistake, and then if we make one mistake one time, we're like, it's a catastrophe. So there's a double standard here, right? William and Sam can get up here and go insane, or Wes can make some of these pretty significant errors, even though this is his area of expertise, right? Like his main focus is philology and text criticism. So how do you get the gospel ending stuff wrong? But it's not like a mistake of, oh yeah, I said this word and it was really that word. Or, there are some mistakes you can get wrong just because you misreferenced it, right? You didn't think of it that way. When you're preparing a video and you're putting up slides and you're showing things and you're saying, hey, this is here an example of, and then that's what you say, right? Gaps at the ending where, the shorter ending is, or the middle ending, and there could be space for the longer ending. But it contradicts you, right? You've got a gap at the end of the longer ending. So what now? And you got gaps all over the place. And anyone who studies these manuscripts could have been able to see that. So it seems clear. It seems like Wes, obviously he's taken education, right? One good thing about formal education, at least you people can say, well, you've studied this. We know you went to the, versus you just saying you studied it. Saying that's, you still got to prove it one way or the other. But so what happened, right? Where did that error go wrong? Exactly. How did the whole team and Wes miss that? So you guys have to be careful, okay? It's not that everything Wes says is bad or everything Dr. White says is bad, right? Just because he didn't see any errors in what Wes said on Rogan, even though it was staring us right in the face, right? Or should have been. Either way, it doesn't mean everything these people who make these mistakes say is wrong or bad. It does mean you have to be more careful, right? Because the more a person knows and the more visible they become, the more errors they can make, and they can mislead a lot of people. That's why I try to be more careful. I try to qualify what I say and how we believe and present our beliefs, right? Solis Veritas, best available reasons. We don't have to know anything or everything, of course. We just have to have the best reasons to believe, like anything else. And so either way, when you're dealing with text and objective facts and things you can actually look at and see, oh, yes or no, you really can't make those mistakes, or you can't make a lot of them, right? Not close together for sure, and certainly not without apologizing. Like real clearly, pretty quickly, made an error there, but I got all this other stuff right, or whatever you want to say to balance it out. But you can't leave us all hanging like this. You can't leave us dealing with all these non-Christians and with the fallout of a high-profile appearance and some pretty significant errors there and related to it. There's got to be an equivalent video and a retraction that says, yeah, I was either pumped up or I said things in a way that weren't correct, or I presented slides that were in error. I don't know. You got to do what you can. So on this Isaiah thing, you can look up, the guy who did the best work that I saw in the mistakes Wes made on the gospel endings was the Gnostic informant. Okay, so he's a non-Christian, but he seems to me to be like someone who's diligent in his research, certainly enough to show that Wes was wrong before any Christian did. At least that I saw. If someone wants to point me to a Christian, Trinitarian or non, that got up here and challenged Wes when he said what he said about the New Testament endings, made us all look stupid, then sure, then I'll point that out. Until then, we have to give credit where credit is due. And unfortunately, the non-Christians are getting a lot of credit now because they're doing the work Christians should be doing. Now, I and others can't do everything. This isn't even my fight. the Bible, Christianity, overall, yes, of course. I have to stand up for what I believe on that side. This whole Wes Huff, gospel Indians thing, and those aren't things I've ever said or stand by the way he has presented them. But I know a lot of people are watching him, and I'm getting some questions, like I said, and people referencing him, and it's like, look, are any of you guys actually looking up what he's saying? Or are you just running with the trend and the fact that he sounds more intelligent than Big and Little Fatty Sam and William, right? And we have good reasons for those nicknames. Trust me on that. So, right, I don't put Wes in that category. I don't think he's like a joke or a clown like William and Sam. But at the same time, I don't think Sam would make these kinds of mistakes. Now, maybe he wouldn't necessarily know enough technically to be even in the discussion, but that's what I mean. He wouldn't say what he doesn't know on these technical levels, and so he's not as susceptible to these errors in my experience. Pick your poison. Either way, maybe William would make these mistakes. Anything's possible with William. But in terms of Wes and this whole gospel ending thing, if you want more, and you're not a baby Christian who can't handle differences of opinion, look at the Gnostic Conformance channel. This whole Isaiah word for word thing that Wes said on his appearance with Joe Rogan. This is, in my opinion, well, the gospel ending thing's a big deal too. I don't know how that's your specialty, right? I'm still kind of baffled by it. But when I heard Dr. White not even bring up the Isaiah scroll thing, I thought, are any of these guys, I heard some of Wes's friends, trying to stand up for him too. And I wish I had friends like that. Well, I guess maybe not, right? I don't want my friends like just getting up there and lying for me or doing anything other than apologizing when I make a mistake, right? That's what a real friend would do. Not get up there and make you look and everybody look more stupid just so you don't, take a hit. Sometimes you got to take a hit. You're going to be up there in the line of fire and you're going to say things and they're that wrong. Well, then you take the hit and you move on and you learn from it. This is making it worse. This is like what they said about Billy Carson and what he did and how he made it worse. This is the same thing. This might even be worse because Wes knows more than Billy, of course, So he's got to deal with this very clearly and now. This can't just linger on or I have to keep making this clear. We're not on his team. No, sorry. Yes and no, right? It's unfortunate. And again, I think overall Wes is a positive thing, I guess. I'm trying to present the best possible Christianity I can. And I realize I'm not in agreement with a lot of people that are more visible than me on key issues. That's not going to keep me from trying, though. All right, so this whole Isaiah thing, let me bring up after I saw the Joe Rogan show, and I saw, some responses. I saw some non-Christians, showing critical Hebrew texts with notes showing variance between the Great Isaiah Scroll, 1Q, Isaiah A, basically a complete copy of the book of Isaiah, chapters 1 through 66, dated to the 1st century BCE, basically. I saw them not really giving clear examples, though. They were showing, anyone could look at the variant notes and see there's some differences in the Isaiah scroll and the Masoretic Text, but what are those differences, right? And I saw Wes's side kind of respond that way. Hey, well, what's the significance? And then I saw Dr. White, most recently, basically say, well, what are you talking about? Well, what we're talking about, Dr. White, in addition to the Joe Rogan show. And I'm just going to leave it at this Isaiah thing. I've already commented on the gospel endings. That was significant. That's a big deal. So there needs to be a very clear apology there. I think there was a video or something. So if that's the case, that's fine. Same thing needs to happen with this Isaiah scroll thing, right? Because millions of people have seen this now. Joe Rogan even followed up with Wes and said, word for word, because Wes said it's word for word. And I listened to it several times. I thought, can I maybe make a case for Wes saying, because aggregately, if you took all the Isaiah texts we have from the Dead Sea Scrolls, you'd be a lot closer and almost where Wes said we were, right? Word for word. But we're not. And it's certainly not in the Great Isaiah Scroll, which is what he was talking about. It's very clear that that's exactly what he was referring to. And so the thing is, I think it's okay to say stuff like practically identical or almost the same. I think the Great Isaiah Scroll, 1Q Isaiah A, and the Masoretic Text, represented primarily by the Leningrad Codex, but also the Aleppo Codex. Aleppo, 10th century, Leningrad, 11th century. Leningrad is complete. They both have Isaiah, though, and I checked them both in these cases. So I have right here, in fact, it's my copy of the Aleppo Codex. It's hard to show on the screen. It's a facsimile reproduction. I don't want to open it too much. Just free-handedly. I don't want to do it outside of the little thing I have that I put it on. And then that's the Aleppo Codex. This is the Leningrad Codex. Right here. And I'm going to show you a part on this in a minute. Get back to that, though. So I have those, and I use them regularly when I want to verify primarily vowel pointings. And also to do comparisons with the Dead Sea Scrolls. I do that frequently. So when I decided I had to do this for this issue, I went ahead and I have a larger list. I'd have to go through it again to say I've done an exhaustive compilation. I doubt that. I went through it pretty thoroughly in the last several days. It's actually started, last, I guess, is essentially right after I heard the interview. So a day and a half, however long that was, right after I heard the interview, I thought immediately, that's not correct. Because he said it so emphatically, the way Wes said it, word for word. And Rogan followed up and said, word for word? Word for word. And he says, that's a miracle. That would be a miracle. And that's the problem, right? That's what the atheists, the non-Christians are hammering away on. That's not what we have, and Wes made it seem that we do. And the problem that really solidified for me that I have to do this or do something is that we can't have this being perpetrated. People like Dr. White not saying anything. And then we have something like the Great Isaiah Scroll that is, in fact, an outstanding witness and testimony to the credibility of the Bible, specifically the book of Isaiah, of course. But now it's like become tainted, right? Like I said, what Wes should have said was the Great Isaiah Scroll is practically identical, almost the same, right? There are some significant variances and then a lot of minor variants that most people have been pointing these facts out, but not giving it as clear of examples as I'm going to give you right now. Not that I've seen anyway. They're still, aggregately, they're still very small compared to the overall agreement of the text. So I don't have a problem. There has to be a qualifier, though. There can't be this word for word, no. Excuse me, no way. That shouldn't have been said. And again, like with the gospel endings things, I don't really understand why it was said. The only reasons I can come up with are Wes didn't know, right? I mean, why else would he have said that? Why else would he say it's word for word and then double down on it? Word for word, word for word. But it's clearly not. And if you've studied it at all, you would know that. It seems like he studied it. So why'd he say that? I don't know. Part of me wants to hope that he just got caught up in the moment and for some reason overstated his case. It still doesn't look good, though, does it? That's about as charitable as I can be, though. On the gospel endings things, good luck to you guys. That's not a good look. Either way, let me bring up the Isaiah examples I want to show you. This is not the complete list I compiled. I spent enough time, trust me. But when I saw the interview and then I got a question about it, I thought this is too important. All right. So, chapter 1, the reason this should never have been said is it's like real easy to find out. You would find this out just by reading and comparing the, let me bring up what I compared it with for the Dead Sea Scrolls. Right, is all you'd have to do, and I have this available on my site. I'm showing Isaiah 7:14 right now. We're going to go to that. Right, so it's kind of big. Make this smaller. Right, this is the DSS collections.imj.org. Great Isaiah Scroll. Right, it's a really handy edition. I've shown you guys this before. So you can see very clearly the text here. It also gives you an English translation, but I'm going to show you several slides. So that's what I used for the actual Isaiah scroll text that I used for these comparisons. And the Aleppo Codex and Leningrad I just showed you from my collection. So chapter 1, the blue is the Isaiah Dead Sea Scroll. Only if it has more material than the Masoretic Text. If the Isaiah Scroll has less material than the Masoretic Text, the Isaiah material is in green, or the reference, and then the material that's in MT, Masoretic Text, that's what MT references or stands for, is in purple and white. So just want to make it, I'll show you, again, as we proceed. There's just several examples. This won't take a long time. So the blue is the Dead Sea Scroll text, 1Q Isaiah A. It has the word and, right? Remember, Wes said word for word, word for word, word for word. Okay, when you say word for word, and you're a philologist, you're a text critic, that has to be what it says. You have to qualify it, right? These kinds of statements are just inviting the non-Christians to attack us and say, look, your scholars, your number one guys are making these terrible errors, misrepresenting the text. We all get punished for that. Not acceptable. Right? So I verified these. Anyone could have done this who knows Hebrew, or at least can look and see the differences, right? You'd have to know some, though. Wes certainly should have been able to. So again, it doesn't make sense. Neither him and his whole team. I don't know. I don't understand. But I want to hope for the best, right? We all make mistakes. I've already said that. But these are just a little bit harder to justify and explain. That's why apologies are necessary, so we don't have to all continue to do this. All right, so chapter 1, verse 3, it has the Hebrew word and, we ami, and my people. MT does not have the Hebrew word we, and. It just says ami. Verse 15, now actually, this is in red, so that clues me in to go to one of our slides. Here is, in fact, Isaiah 1:3. And you can see right above me, or right, I'll put me where it is. You go look right above my head, like literally straight up. You can see right here, the wa. We ami lo, and my people not. And then this is the verb for consider. Do not consider. If you look down below, it gives you an English translation even. You can see it says, last part, and my people do not understand or consider. So you can see right here, it shows it does have the word and in the English. It's right there in the Hebrew. It's hard to see a little bit. It's as big as I could make it. It's right there. Okay? It's not in the Masoretic text, though. So, word for word, right? This minor variation, but it's an example of how no, it's not word for word. Also, in the Dead Sea Scrolls, the words "your fingers with iniquity" occur, but those are not in the Masoretic text, not word for word. Verse 16, the word "and" again is in the Dead Sea Scroll, not in MT. A second time in verse 16, the word "and" occurs in the Dead Sea Scroll of Isaiah, the Great Isaiah Scroll, but not in MT. And then later in verse 16, the evil of is in 1Q Isaiah A, but not in the MT, Aleppo or Leningrad. Verse 31, the is in the MT, but your is in 1Q Isaiah A. So the pronoun in the Dead Sea Scroll and the article in MT. His is in MT, but your is in the Dead Sea Scroll, Great Isaiah Scroll. Those are differences. The is not possessive, your is. His is third person possessive, your is second person possessive. Chapter 4, verse 5, Dead Sea Scroll of Isaiah has the word for "and" again, not in MT. These words are in MT and smoke, Masoretic text, but not in the Dead Sea Scrolls. These words are also in MT, right? And again, I should point out, just because words are additional in one text or the other, that does not prove they're original. A lot of people like to think that's the case, but you can see for yourself right here and in the text we've already looked at. The Dead Sea Scrolls do contain additional words. Now, they're not that significant. Here, there's some additional words more than "and," just like here. But that's more than what's in MT, and it's older than MT. And so, again, there are more factors to consider when we look at what's original or likely original. But the purple and white is additional text in MT that's not in the Great Isaiah Scroll. Word for word, not even close. Verse 6 of chapter 4. All that in purple and white, all that in purple and white is in MT, but not in the Great Isaiah Scroll. Chapter 6. Now this is interesting. Trinitarians like to bring up this verse frequently, in fact. They like to bring up the fact that holy is used 3 times in the Bible, at least in the Masoretic text of Isaiah 6:3. And you can see it's in red. That clues us in to go to a slide. Let's do that. That'll show us Isaiah 6:3 in the Dead Sea Scrolls. And if you look right below me, you can see the word that we're reading from right to left, okay? You can see the word kadosh. And it's repeated right here, kadosh. Kadosh, kadosh, Ya'o, Tzabaot. Holy, holy, Ya'o of armies. It only says holy twice. You can see that also in the translation above provided at this site. But in the Masoretic text, and in probably any English Bible you pull out of Isaiah 6:3, it says holy 3 times. So that's a significant difference and would certainly affect the argument of many Trinitarians. Chapter 7, this is another significant difference. Verse 14, it has the Lord in the Masoretic text. That's why it's in pink and white, but it's not in the Dead Sea Scroll of Isaiah. The Dead Sea Scroll, the Great Isaiah Scroll, does have the divine name. The Masoretic text does not. Now, this is the probably more significant part. Verse 14 in the Dead Sea Scrolls uses a proper name, Emmanuel. In the Masoretic text, it puts a space in both the Leningrad and the Aleppo. I checked them both. And you can even look online right here. You go to thestepbible.org. You can just look how even they point it right at the end of verse 14. Imanu, and then there's a space. Just like there's a space here, space showing separation of words. Imanu, space. I'm looking at the other way on the way it's set up. L. That's how the Masoretic text points this. The Aleppo and the Leningrad that I showed you. And it really creates an expression out of a proper name. It creates the expression, God with us. But the Dead Sea Scroll, the great Isaiah text, doesn't do that. They're all one word. If we go to Isaiah 7:14, it look right below the bottom of my neckline, straight down. That's the word Emmanuel. And there is no separation between Imanu and El. If you look over to the right, like if you look right below my neckline right now, look at that space. See that space right there? And then if we move over a little bit more, look under my neckline right now. See that space? Those are spaces. You go over to the word Emmanuel, below my neckline right now, straight below my nose. That's one word, Emmanuel. Just like in the Greek New Testament, of course, the oldest ones, they all run together. But in Matthew 1:23, it defines it, showing clearly that's what it originally had, a full proper name. The way that the Masoretic text creates a space between Imanu and El, it would be like taking the name Jehu, Ya'ol is he, or Ya'ol he is understood. And instead of saying Jehu, saying Ya'ol is he. Instead of referring to him as Jehu, the actual Jehu, referring to him as Ya'ol is he. That's the equivalent of what the Masoretic text does to Isaiah 7:14. Changes it from a proper name into an expression, which I think Trinitarians often abuse. So once again, is a significant difference between the Dead Sea Scroll of Isaiah and the Masoretic text. Okay, just a couple more. Chapter 17. Let me get myself lined up here. 17 verse 7 in the purple. That's in the Masoretic text, the work of their hands. That's not in the Dead Sea Scroll of Isaiah. The Dead Sea Scroll of Isaiah says his works. That's a difference. Work of their hands, his works. Third person plural versus third person singular. His works is not in the Masoretic text. Chapter 21, verse 16. Masoretic text has the Lord. Dead Sea Scroll does not. Dead Sea Scroll has the divine name. Masoretic text does not. Sometimes one or the other has Lord or the divine name. That's why I say one or the other does not or does. And sometimes they might have both. Now, the more significant difference is this one. Within a year. That's in the Masoretic text. The Great Isaiah Scroll says 3 years. That's a difference of 2 years. Chapter 54, just a couple more. Verse 17. All of this in purple and white is in the Masoretic Text, but not in the Great Isaiah Scroll. That's actually it. There are more. I have more examples. I could show more. It's not my intent to document every single difference. I might do a separate blog where I do that. I'd have to go back through it though and finish the list I started to compile. I got pretty detailed. Then I backed away because I realized I didn't need to do all of them or get so detailed in all the variants to make the point that it should never be said that the Great Isaiah Scroll matches word for word the Masoretic Text Isaiah Scroll. At most, you could say the Great Isaiah Scroll is close to the same or practically identical, but has some minor variants and some significant variants, but that overall it's in agreement. Or say that the entire body of Dead Sea Scrolls, including the Great Isaiah Scroll from the Dead Sea region, provide us with almost the exact same copy of the text with some variations. There would be some, but not as many, from the Masoretic Text tradition. Regardless, it's more important for me that it's clear to everybody that the Great Isaiah Scroll is a great witness to the text of Isaiah, one of our most important biblical books. It testifies to the coming of the Messiah. So it's more important that we be honest about these things. It doesn't match the Masoretic Text tradition word for word. I don't think it has to. It would be better if it did, but the fact that it doesn't requires us to qualify it, if that's what we're talking about, the Great Isaiah Scroll, or to expand our reference to include all the Dead Sea Scroll texts and make our case based on that. Either way, I wish Wes Huff the best in terms of his proceeding forward with teaching or representing anything related to Christianity. I think it'd be wise to back off some of these broad statements, especially when they relate directly to your area of expertise. Nobody's denying that you have studied and know some important information. I think most of us just want to make sure, at least on the Christian side, that you can continue to present these things in a way that doesn't take away from what you're presenting that's true because of errors that you're making that are false and that you could apologize for and put an end to all of this if you haven't already. And either way, this really wasn't made for Wes. He's quite capable of determining whether he made a mistake and apologizing or not. Seems pretty obvious to me. And I don't see any advantage in not apologizing very clearly and very quickly when these things are pointed out. I made this for those of you who don't know enough, whether Trinitarian or non, but you're a Christian and you kind of like to see people speaking up about the Bible. I understand. But if we're not honest and we're not more careful and we don't apologize and make corrections where necessary, it's only going to look worse. And we're not going to get anywhere. So let's just try to be a little bit more honest. We don't need to make these broad statements. We can qualify what we're saying and make our case according to the best available evidence, at least if you believe like me. If not, well, good luck to you. And may God bless you. In Jesus' name.